Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Neela.
Very good morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, welcome for this FDP.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll make you presenter, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Sir, we have made you presenter.
Sure. Once your initial talk will be over, I can
Yeah,
share
you can
my.
start sharing your slide. Yes, sir.
Now also?
No, not now, sir.
After
Yeah,
yours.
once the formal session is over, then we can
Sure.
start sharing your slides.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Patil, sir, I think your desktop is visible on the screen. Yeah, this is fine now.
Good morning, Dr. Anil.
Yeah, good morning, Manish.
So,
Nice to see you after a long time.
yes, On behalf of Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy, I welcome you on this platform for the FDP.
Thank you.
Madam, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
A very good morning to one and all. On behalf of Bharati Vidyapeeth
Mike.
College of Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy, Kolhapur, I, Ms. Sonali Nirankari, welcome you. Respected Dr. H.N. Moy, sir, Principal, Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy, Kolhapur. Respected Dr. M.S. Bhatia, sir, Vice Principal, Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy, Kolhapur, and Chief Coordinator of this FDP. Respected today's eminent speakers, Dr. Anil Deshpande, Dr. Raghuveer Pisrulenkar and Mr. Jagta and all our participants for this fourth day of the AICT Training and Learning Academy sponsored 5 days faculty development program on exploring pharmacokinetics with artificial intelligence and quantum computing organized by Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy, Kolhapur. Now, moving towards our session, it will be my honor to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. Anil Deshpande. Currently, he is lead investigator at Discovery Studios, Syngene, Bangalore. He has pursued his M.Pharm in pharmaceutical chemistry from Devi Ahilya University, Indore, his PhD from National Chemical Laboratory, Pune, and postdoctoral research associate from University of Alabama at Birmingham, USA. He is having 17 years of research experience in drug discovery and CRO setup. He has handled various research projects with Eurofins Advenus. He had been associated in collaborative drug discovery programs in supporting preclinical drug candidates of metabolic disorder, inflammation, and neglected diseases. Good. Also, he is having good track record to drive projects efficiently from hit to lead optimization to preclinical candidate identification for several drug discovery programs. Along with Syngene International Limited, he has been involved in executing and managing collaborative drug discovery program with a team of chemists including postdocs and PhDs. He is having 16 peer-reviewed articles and 8 patents to his credit. He has been awarded with Advenus CEO Award in 2015, UAB Career Enhancement Award in 2004, Indian Drug Manufacturing Association GP Nair Award in 1994. So it is our pleasure to have the presence of a creative medicinal chemist, Dr. Anil Deshpande, for this FDP and to highlight the part of his experiences with optimization of pharmacokinetic properties in preclinical discovery. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sonali, for your kind introduction. So, Neela, I need to share the presentation and then
Yes,
I start?
sir. Yes,
Sure.
sir. You can start sharing your slides, sir.
Yes. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay, I will go in a PowerPoint mode.
Yes.
Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, sir. We can see, sir.
Okay, so once again, thank you, Sonali, for your kind introduction. And I would initially would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to Dr. Professor More, Professor Dr. Bhatia, Manish. Actually, whenever Manish calls us, Manish is a senior couple of years to me, and we had always very good interaction. And whenever he calls for any seminar or any talk, we can't refuse or we can't say whatever is our busy schedule, we need to reserve time for him. And that's where actually Manish has contacted me 6 months back. And this program, because of the pandemic, it might have got postponed. And it is really very good. Means I really enjoy the company of Manish always. And being associated with me, I had taken this opportunity to deliver lecture uh, to all of you under this AICTE sponsored faculty development program. I would also like to thank Dr. Pawar, who was in touch with me for last couple of days for organizing this seminar, sending the link, whether it is working properly, so that the program get facilitate very well. And I would also like to thank Dr. Neela Bhatia, who means she was a colleague for me during my M.Pharm, and after she got very good means with Manish and Neela, always I have the very good bonding.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, sure. And I would like to tell everyone you can disturb me whenever throughout the presentation, or if you feel like that, you can post the questions, and after the presentation, I can take those questions in a chat box. So maybe your moderator can pass me those questions. But if it's really genuine, you can stop me anytime.
Yes,
So
sir.
today, the topic of my talk is optimization of pharmacokinetic properties in preclinical discovery. I know that from the last 4 days, you are enjoying the various lectures by various eminent speakers across the globe. And it's a very good learning opportunity which college and AICT jointly has provided to all staff members, faculty members. And with that, I would also like to share some experiences, whatever I learned throughout my industrial career, I would like to present to you. And this opportunity always give you the nice platform to understand the topic again. Again, you go through the recent literature, and your understanding will again develop. So really thanks for that, so that I could touch up my basics as well as the advancement in the field. So towards the pharmaco is really towards the artificial intelligence, which is a very hot topic nowadays, and every drug pharma industries is behind that. How this AI can be used in each field of the drug discovery. They are trying to apply this AI in very starting from finding the hit up to the clinical development, which Bahuseb Patil has already covered the AI application into the clinical development. At the same time, there is Professor Dr. Ingley is going to deliver today, I think, predicting the drug pharmacokinetics. So my
No, his talk was delivered, sir.
Oh, his talk is delivered already.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
And I think after me there is artificial intelligence and PK enhancing. So that topic is after my talk. So basically my talk may provide you some basic concept about preclinical discovery, how the molecules from heat to lead optimization is done, and what are the different parameters you look into the pharmacokinetics. So moving to the next slide. So what is the pharmacokinetics? If you really, everyone knows this, but it's a like basic concept, so we should quickly cover or the browse through. So pharmacokinetics, pharmaco is nothing but the drug. This is a pharmacology, pharmaceutics, which is all science related to the drugs. In a similar way, the pharmacokinetics is nothing but the drug movement. So the drug movement is in the body or into the living system. The science which describes the rate of movement of the drug within the biological system. So it may be the rodents like mice or rat. It may be a primate, including the mix. So once you administer the drug, so it has to show its effect. At the same time, being this is a foreign body to your any human being or any animals, the compound will try to get metabolized or the fate of the drug in the body over a period of time. So that is nothing but the pharmacokinetics. So there is always a term used as ADME PK studies. So what does ADME stands for, or what is the pharmacokinetics actually? When ADME is nothing but the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. When you are studies doing focus solely on one of the aspect, either it may be the absorption, either it may be the metabolism, or it may be elimination, and that you are doing either in vitro condition or the in vivo condition. But those are the stand alone, each parameter. Those are called as ADME studies. But when ADME studies are done in a biological system and as an integrated way, means you would like to see how the drug is absorbed, then it gets distributed, then metabolized, and finally it has to get eliminated. So that combined effect of that compound or that drug is called, in vivo setup, is called as a pharmacokinetics. If you go to this slide gives the cartoon representation of the ADME. These are the four determinants of the pharmacokinetics in vivo condition. So specifically, we will be talking about the oral drug delivery, or there are the two setups. One is intravenous, other is extravascular. So the extravascular system involves, it can be oral, it can be intraperitoneal, it can be subcutaneous, intramuscular, or the inhalation or the topical. So the topical application, which is subcutaneous, you can, which is a topical application through the skin permeation. So drug can be absorbed with various routes. So whenever drug is administered with extravascular route, it has to go the phase of the absorption. So there are various hurdles because our system is such like it won't accept the foreign bodies that easily. It has to really go through the different cells, different membranes, and it has to cross those barriers to reach to your circulation, blood circulation. So the absorption is one of the determinant factor which determines the pharmacokinetic of any compound. Once it gets absorbed, the compound will be into the blood compartment, or generally we refer it as a central compartment of the body, where the compound will get exposed to the various tissues and or the target site. At the same time, if it is absorbed by the oral, it will first go to the liver, which is called as a first pass effect. And if the compound is stable, again, it will come from the liver and it will be in your general circulation, and where it sees the various receptors, various enzymes for which the drug is to be intended. So after the absorption, there are the two phases, which is the distribution as well as inactivation or the metabolism, which goes parallel or the simultaneously. And the last phase is excretion. So being the liver is a major organ where most of the compounds are getting metabolized. So apart from the liver, even before getting absorbed, the intestine also plays a role in the metabolism. The lungs, sweat gland, kidney, those are the other organs which are helpful in the excretion of your foreign body. And these excretion products get eliminated either through the feces, urine, water vapor, sweat, or the saliva. So this all combined effect of this ADME is nothing but the pharmacokinetics. So moving into the now the drug discovery aspect, you quite understand that the drug discovery has the major two phases, which is the preclinical drug discovery and the clinical part of the drug discovery. In a preclinical drug discovery, you need to identify the target, then you have to validate the target, and after the validation of the target, there are several techniques to validate the target by genetic validation and pharmacological validation. In the genetic validation, you do the knock-in, knockout studies, which gives the potential which targets are really helpful to control the disease or to treat the disease. And then start the work of medicinal chemists to identify the hit and taking that hit up to the optimized lead or the candidate nomination. And then start the clinical phases. Once you are through the IND phase, investigational new drug, there are certain parameters it should fulfill. And after that, the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 different trials will be done on the investigational compound. So why there were a lot of development compounds are failed? In generally, there is a funneling of the compound. You start with several hundred thousands of the compound against specific target. Then in a excuse me, if everyone can keep their speakers on a mute. I'm getting some background noise.
Yeah. Dear participants, kindly put your mic on mute.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So in a clinical setup or the preclinical discovery, this is a very intense process, and a lot of companies will pan out or it won't go ahead because of the several reasons. And if you talk with respect to the pharmacokinetics, so we need to be bring the pharmacokinetics parameters in a compound, discovery compound, in a well-organized manner. Otherwise, there are high chances that compound get in the attrition or it will get dropped out as it moves ahead. So this is one of the statistics from one of the drug discovery research article. This is actually the 2 decades back. In early 1991, if you look at the bar graphs, the major attrition was responsible is the efficacy and pharmacokinetics and the bioavailability. Those are the major factors, and the first factor is the clinical safety, which means the toxicity may arise during the clinical phase. Major contributing factors in the clinical setups in a range of 1991 to 2000. But in the early 2000, it has been shown that this PK bioavailability has reduced drastically. So why it has been reduced? Because there is a lot of development, significant changes has done understanding the PK parameter, or rather because in a preclinical discovery, we do the PK on different animal models and how it translates into the human. That understanding has evolved very well, and attempt to overcome this bioavailability problem and predicting the preclinical species PK into the human. These techniques have developed a lot of new in vitro parameters have come into the industry, which has helped to reduce the attrition specifically in PK and bioavailability cases. But right now, the most of the attrition is mainly due to the efficacy or clinical safety, but the PK and bioavailability has reduced drastically. So before going into the specific pharmacokinetics talk, I will just glimpse you how preclinical discovery works. So once you have the target identified, you need to get the hit. The hit can be identified through the virtual screening, which again, nowadays it is immensely driven by the computational aspects, or now the AI, artificial intelligence, where you could able to find the virtual hits. At the same time, there are the high throughput screening campaign, the big pharma or the medium biotech pharma runs, but it is a very resource intensive as well as a time and money intensive efforts. The hit identification is also done by the DNA encoded library, which is upcoming field into the drug discovery, where you can screen the million or the billion of the compounds in a very few weeks, and analysis will take little extra time. But the variety of the compounds or the large scope of chemical scaffold can be identified as a hit using the DNA encoded library. So once you identify the hit, it has been screened against the primary assays where your protein, which is expressed either in a human protein, which is standalone protein in vitro assays, that may be the radioligand assay or the fluorometric assay or the colorimetric assay. You screen your compound against whether it may be the inhibitor, agonist, antagonist. At the same time, now with artificial intelligence, you can predict how this compound may perform in terms of the pharmacokinetics. So that idea you can get from the various softwares used by the industry, but again, those are the highly expensive. And again, the prediction and actual data is way different, but at least it will give you the guidelines to understand what kind of compounds you should proceed. Or it will help you to funnel down your targets. Then you go for the selectivity, because all targets will have the other isoforms, or it should not hit the vital process in your system. So it should be very selective against the target. And then it starts ADME PK studies. Which initially we do standalone studies. That's why it is called as ADME studies. We understand the metabolic stability, then absorption. Then from the physicochemical parameters, the solubility is very important. And we look the compound into the cell-based assays. So why we do all these studies before the cell-based assays? Because in the cell-based assays, your compound has to cross the cell membrane. So there the question of the solubility, then the permeation, as well as the stability will come. We need to check that compound is passing this condition, then you can expect the compound should show the activity in the cell-based assays. Once you cross all this hurdle, then it reaches to the PK. So there the concept emerging, the cassette PK, or it is routinely practiced specifically in the CNS kind of therapeutic area, or even the routine now PROTAC kind of concept is coming on a PROTAC, so that number of compounds, like you can select the 5 to 6 compounds at a time, and it will be dosed either in IV or the oral condition, and it will be analyzed to select or the further funneling down the few compounds. And after that, it comes the efficacy study, the toxicity studies, and the PK in a different species, because once it is from the rodent, it has to go to the higher species to understand the exposure as well as understand the therapeutic window of the compound. At the same time, efficacy, and then it will go to the IND studies. So this is a parallel progression strategy most of the industries will follow. So why do we do the pharmacokinetic analysis? Why it is required to screen the compound before taking into the efficacies? So the PK properties are very important because it gives you the idea how much compound is present after administering into the blood or into the plasma, and how the body reacts to that foreign compound, whether it allows it to stay in your system for sufficient time, because your compound should remain on a target. There are targets which needed like 24/7 coverage. Few targets, even the compound is there for 4 to 5 hours, it will show its effect. So there are the different targets requirement. As per we need to understand the exposure of compound in the living system. Then it will help you to understand, because you may have the good compound which are showing the good activity in the primary assay, secondary assay. The cascading down or the selecting the compound which is having the ideal PK, we need to screen the compound into the animal species. So this is also a very important part, or the important aspect to choose the right compound. So the ideal drug should give its effect. At the same time, it will have to limit its therapeutic index, means it should limit the exposure within a certain limitation, so it should not show any toxicity. So we need to understand the pharmacokinetics with that aspect, and there is a specific field, or we generally called as a pharmacokinetic pharmacodynamic studies. So PK/PD correlation, it needs to pass through. And if the compound is a short living or there in the system for a very short period of time, it may not show its effect. So understand all these parameters. The PK analysis is very important. And again, every species they behave differently. Like the rodents, they metabolize your compound at a very high rate compared to the bigger species or compared to the primate. So you need to understand the species variation and the dose requirement, whether compound you stays in a body for 24 hours or it get eliminated within 8 hours. Based on that, you need to decide the dosage, whether it is a single dose in a day or the twice or the thrice. And again, the route of administration. Sometimes your compound have all parameters, except it may not pass through the oral gut membrane. In that case, whether you have to try the prodrug approach, or whether you can pass the oral route, you can go by any other route like intramuscular, subcutaneous, or the topical application. So all these PK analysis will help you to determine the parameters, how you can take your good compound to the next phase. Because after a long efforts, you are seeing the good compounds and you don't want to lose that compound just because it is not orally bioavailable. So you need to look for all other aspects. Can it be based on your target of interest? You need to tackle those things. So I hope everything is fine and I am online.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Maybe I will check maybe after a few slides every time.
Yeah, no problem, sir.
So if you look at the pharmacokinetic study, there are the various components associated with the pharmacokinetic study. So the major components are the in-life phase, where you dose your compound to your subject or the animals, or in case of the clinical to the human. And the major challenging phase is a bioanalytical phase, where you quantify your compound by various methods. And generally the method used over here is LC-MS, QTOF. It's a high-grade instrument, where we could quantify up to nanogram or the picogram level. For that, you need to develop the bioanalytical methods to estimate the drug. So in drug discovery, the initial PK studies are routinely carried on the rodents. Being these rodents are generally the model used for your disease or the efficacy models. So you have to select the rodent model based on the efficacy species. Then subsequent this PK analysis will help you the disposition of the compound, what I told you in the previous slide, whether the compound will require the BID dosing or the single dosing based on its pharmacokinetic analysis. At the same time, before taking to the human, you need to assure that the compound is safe, efficacious, safe in terms of it is not having any side effects on your vital organ, or it is not showing any genotoxicity, whether it is very good for your system and no bad effects on your vital organ like heart, lungs, kidney. So all these studies will be taken care into the tox. Majorly, the tox studies will be done on a rat and dog, or sometimes monkey. And all these species, finally, the ultimate goal of this development compound is to take into the human. So based on the PK analysis of the various species, there are the techniques called allometric scaling, so which will predict the human dose and how much compound requirement, how much dose it has to give, at what time intervals you should give the compound. So all these studies, predictions is based on the preclinical studies on animal models. So, and the route of the compound administration, which dictate ensure the clinical commercial success of a given indication. So for all these components, PK study is very important. So what are the animal species used for the preclinical discoveries? So this slide is specifically talking about the type 2 diabetes, but don't look into that aspect. I will try to cover majority of the targets. Routinely in the pharma industry, the very initial set of models, once your lead compound is there, they will take these compounds into the mice or the rats, which are rodent. The mice is a preferred species because the amount of the compound required in a mice is very less, being the 25 to 30 gram of the mice. The compound always, discovery compounds are very precious, and you need to make the several analogs. So quantity is limited at the initial stage. So you can use the mice as a model, and most of the efficacy studies will be done either in a mice or rat. If you go for the rat, then almost 25-30 gram mice will get converted in the rat weight is around 250 to 300 gram, tenfold increase in the demand of the compound. And but both of these models are the really cost effective, immediately available, and you can routinely do the studies in a limited time span. It has several advantages over the other species. And once you qualify these rodent models, obviously you need to understand this compound effect or the pharmacokinetic in a bigger species. Because we are going from the rodent to bigger species, then non-human primate, and finally towards the human or the primates. The second species preferred for the preclinical discovery is a dog, sometimes rabbit or the guinea pigs, based on the disease area but the dog are generally preferred, which are available. Again, your demand of the compound will go high because the bigger dog generally they use, and it is around 10 to 15 kgs in the range. And specifically looking at the cardiovascular safety, the dog is preferred. And these dog studies are highly expensive unless and until you see the potential in a compound. You don't prefer to go such a large animal studies. In one aspect, the pharmacokinetics is very similar to the human, and specific organs are very related to the human. So the dog is a preferred species in that. And once you qualify the rodent dog, then the compound will be studied in the next phase in a human, non-human primate, which are the cynomolgus monkeys. They preferred. Again, nowadays, because of Animal Act and getting this facility is very limited. Very few CROs run this primate, non-human primate studies. So here the metabolic physiology and anatomy is very similar to the human. The genetic identity is very close to the human. There are many advantages in a monkey model. And so you can use this translation of the PK and monkey PK to the human very relevantly, and you can predict the dosage for the clinical studies. So these are the various preclinical spaces we use during our studies. And before moving to the clinical, this monkey will be preferred, and it's a very cost-intensive matter. Now we'll look into the various PK parameters, what generally are looked for, and how any compound moving ahead will be studied under these parameters. So specifically, the compound will be studied into the two routes, very typically intravenous route, and as being the small molecule, oral being the patient compliance. The oral, every company would like to bring their compound as an oral delivery, except a few exceptions where you need to have the direct compound with the inhalation or the topical. But the most desired route is oral. So in case of the intravenous, you directly give the bolus administration to the vein. So what are the compound drug? Everything goes at a time point 0. It reaches, it is in the maximum, and then start the phase of metabolism. Initially, it will be the fast elimination, and then it will be the slow elimination phase. So the graph generally for the IVPK, it looks from the higher concentration of the compound and going to eliminate the compound through your system. It may take 6 hours, sometimes 12 hours, 24 hours. If your compound is partitioning into the different organs and again released in the central compartment, it may take few days also. There are compounds which remain a few days, or one of the compound in leishmaniasis treatment, it stays there for a week, several weeks. So again, it will be based on your physicochemical properties of your compound. And the other dosing is oral dosing, where you give the compound through the oral gavage, or in case of the human, through the tablet capsule, the oral dosage forms. So once it is delivered into the gut, it will cross your gut membrane either through stomach, duodenum, or intestine, and slowly increase the concentration into the blood circulation. It reaches to the maximum concentration, which is called as a Cmax, the concentration maximum, and then it starts dropping. Even when it is going to the maximum, at the same time, the elimination phase already started, but the still absorption phase is predominant. So you can see the increase in the concentration. increase in the concentration, and after reaching to the Cmax, slowly the compound will get disposed or eliminated through your system. So the time required to reach the maximum concentration is a Tmax. And generally in a preclinical spaces, it may be like 3 to 4 hours, or sometimes it will be less than an hour, where the compounds are very permeable and get absorbed very fast. And then start the elimination phase. The compound, when then we generally term as a half-life. It is a very important factor to determine the number of dosage we need to select, either QD, like quick dose, the single dose in a day, or it is a BID dose. It is determined by your half-life of the compound, because we need to engage the target for sufficient amount of time. So the time which is corresponding where your Cmax will come to its half of its level is nothing but the T half, and the time corresponding to that half of the concentration is called as a T half of the compound. And finally, the compound will be eliminated. If you go to the next slide, the more important parameter for the PK is AUC, area under the curve. Means how much compound is available into your blood circulation, so that it can go or dispose into the various tissues, and it will show its effect. So typically this is the oral administration graph. And if you look at this highlighted area, they generally calculate the area under the curve by this. These are the sophisticated instrument or the program. We don't have to do manually. Everything is calculated by the instrument. So AUC is expressed in terms of nanogram or the micromolar compound, or nanogram per hour per ml into the plasma or the serum. So AUC primarily measures the how much compound is getting exposed into your system, either after the IV administration or after the oral administration. So AUC is determined by, if you look at this trapezoid, the C2 is the concentration at T2 time, and the C1 at the T1. So there are the mathematical equation which is being used to calculate the area under the curve. And if you start calculating this C2, now this is C3, you can keep adding this trapezoid's concentration. You will understand what is the total area under the curve in terms of nanogram per hour per ml. This is the time on the x-axis and the drug concentration on a y-axis. And you need to calculate the extrapolated area, because your time points may be up to the 8 hours, but still the compound is not totally eliminated, and you may not get the time points beyond 8 hours. Mostly in a typical PK, we go up to 24 hours. And after 24 hours, still there are certain compound, you take the extrapolation, how much time based on the elimination rate, and you will call the AUC infinite, or the AUC up to the last time point, which is called as a AUC 0 to T. So AUC will give you the understanding the how much compound is getting exposed into your body of any living system. The next important parameter is a clearance. As any compound will reaches to its maximum concentration, and it will get declined, because it's a desirable criteria. You never want like that your compound should remain into the system. It should remain up to it shows the effect, and after showing the effect, we need that the compound should get eliminated without showing any toxic effect. And the compound should not get accumulated into the your system. So the clearance is a very important aspect, but at the time your compound should not get cleared very fast, so that it won't be able to engage the target. So this is a therapeutic window we need. It should remain above your IC50 into your system. But again, into your IC50, there are other factors like plasma protein binding, which tightly bound your compound, and very free fraction of the compound is available to the drug target. So those are the parameters you need to look into. So the clearance is calculated using the area under the curve. The clearance is proportionality constant that relates the drug elimination from your blood or from your plasma. Generally, while looking at the AUC exposure, people will prefer the plasma calculation. The blood will be done when your compound has propensity to distribute into the red blood cells because of certain region. Generally, the basic compounds, the organic compounds which are having the basic moiety, they tend to bound with the red blood cells. So in that case, you need to determine the concentration into the blood as well as the plasma. It is assumed that the drug entering into the body is eventually eliminated. So the total amount of the drug eliminated is given by this equation, where the total dose in IV, you know that whatever the compound you are administering, it is reaching into the system. So this clearance, volume of distribution, and the T-half, these are the parameters which are calculated using intravenous route. So the clearance, whatever the dose you are given by the IV, it reaches to whatever the dose you delivered, considered as a whole dose, and how much is there into the central compartment, which will give you the value of the clearance. Why this clearance is required? It is expressed in a liter per hours, or liter per hour per kilogram, or it is generally given as a ml per hour per kilogram. And the drugs that are eliminated, mainly the eliminating organs is a liver. So we call this hepatic clearance or the intrinsic clearance. There are the drugs. So in that case, you need to understand the blood flow towards this eliminating organ, which is a liver. In our system, it is a 1.2 liter per hour per kilogram. And if it is specifically metabolized by the kidney, then the glomerular filtration rate is 0.1 liter per hour per kilogram. And if it is there are the compounds which actually driven by the transporters. There are various transporters expressed to the liver or kidney. If they are utilizing those transporters, then it's very difficult to predict clearance rate, because it's a totally different phenomena involved into your system. So as long as your compound, the blood to plasma ratio is a 1 or close to the unity, your clearance will be determined, and which will reflect the true clearance of your compound. But if it is partitioning more into the blood, you can't derive the clearance based on the plasma concentration. You need to understand the total concentration in the blood as well as in the plasma. So the next parameter is the bioavailability. So after delivering the compound, how much fraction of your compound is getting into the system, whether it is getting 100% into your system or the living system, or whether it is getting into the 50 or 60%. So this is again compared to the intravenous route. As we know, the intravenous is a route where you administer the whole amount of the compound. But in case of the oral, there are the certain hurdles like absorption, permeation. So obviously not 100% compound will be reached. So to calculate how much compound is reached, AUC into the extravascular system, in this case the oral administration or the PO, AUC of the PO divided by AUC of IV and into the dose of the IV into the dose of oral. So that will give you the percentage bioavailability. The bioavailability is always expressed in terms of the percentage. And dissolution, solubility, and permeability are the major determinant factor for bioavailability. At the same time, if your compound is getting metabolized very fast or getting the efflux through the transporters, your bioavailability will be low. That will understand these parameters into subsequent slides. So another important parameter for the PK is the volume of distribution. So what does that mean? So when your compound is in the central compartment or the blood or the plasma, it will get deposited to the various, or it will get exposed to the various organs, the heart, liver, lung, skeletal muscle, or the fat, or bone marrow, or even it crosses the blood-brain barrier and reaches to the brain. So this is called as a distribution of the compound once it reaches to the circulation. So again, there are the several factors which will determine the volume of distribution for any compound. And this is a typical equation where the volume of your compound is the plasma volume plus the volume into the tissue. It gives the whole volume present into the system. And if you want to calculate the volume of distribution, you need to multiply the fraction unbound into the plasma divided by the fraction unbound into the tissue. So in generally, the volume of distribution is considered to be 0.04 liter per kilogram into the human, considering the 3 liters of plasma volume in our human with a 70 kilogram ideal weight, or the total body water content is a 0.6. If your volume of distribution is around 0.6, it is considered as equal to your body water. And if it is more than 2 liter, then in that case, your compound is not only in the blood circulation, but it is getting deposited to the various organ. So this is another factor which really drives your efficacy. And it as the volume of distribution is more, your T half will be more. And again, the volume of distribution will be determined based on the plasma protein binding. If your compound is tightly bound, it will remain into the blood or the plasma. Only the free fraction will go into the various tissues. In that case, the volume of distribution will be low. And there is no strict criteria that a compound should have this kind of volume of distribution. We need to see the all properties combinedly. But certain cases, the volume of distribution is desirable to have the high so that you can engage the target for sufficient amount of time. So there is a volume of distribution at the steady state, where it is a very useful parameter to calculate the intravascular PK data. We can calculate the VSS, the clearance into the mean residential time. And this is the factor which is a determinant of your PK, one of the PK properties. And finally, the half-life. The half-life will be calculated based on your elimination constant. The clearance, if the clearance is more, your T half will be obviously less. And if your volume of distribution is more, your T half is very high. The half-life is a secondary parameter that is a function of clearance and distribution, as well as the half-life calculated to understand the frequency of the drug administration. At the same time, to reach the therapeutic concentration of the compound. So I hope everybody is getting no disturbances and they are getting clarity in my presentation.
Yes, sir. No issues
Okay,
with it.
sure. Thank you. So understanding this basic concept of the PK parameter, so how do in the preclinical setup we do go for optimizing the PK, or we call as a lead optimization phase, where this ADME, the DMPK, apart from the potency and selectivity, the ADME parameters plays very important role to take the compound from the lead to optimized lead. And there are several hurdles, the several issues in preclinical discoveries, like absorption. The compound should have the sufficient absorption to get into the plasma or the blood, or it should not get metabolized fast or the cleared fast to remain into the system, to engage the system. At the same time, it should get distributed to the various organs. So how do you understand this each aspect? So as I mentioned, there is a lot of attrition rate has been came to the down because of the development into this field. There are various in vitro systems or in vitro assays have been developed to understand the absorption and the clearance mechanism as well as the distribution of the compound. If you look at absorption, generally we do the permeability screening. Mainly, there are the three types of the permeability we do generally. The PAMPA, which is the artificial membrane permeability. Then we go, of course, for the Caco2 cell line, which are the carcinoadenoma, colon adenoma carcinogenic cell lines, and MDCK cell line. So Caco2 cell line give you the permeability to pass through the gut, and mainly MDCK, MDR1 cell permeability will help you to understand the blood-brain barrier penetration of your compound. So all these membranes are expressed with the different transporters. One of that efflux mechanism is a PGP, P-glycoprotein efflux, and your compound should not get efflux. So we will look into the subsequent slide more about PGP efflux. And apart to get absorption, so what the parameters can control in terms of the physicochemical properties, should have the good lipophilic and hydrophilic balance, which we get from the log P value or the log D value. Then pKa of whether your compound is having a carboxylic acid, amino functionality, or it is a deuterionic nature, whether it is a weak acid or the weak base. So based on this pK, because every target's requirements are the different, so the pK you need to optimize sometimes to improve your absorption and to improve your permeability. And major determinant factor is the solubility. If your compound is even to move ahead, you have to make the stock solution of the compound to screen again the various screening cascade. So your compound should have the sufficient solubility to pass through all those. And finally, to get the good exposure, your compound should be soluble enough. So as I mentioned, the standalone parameter metabolism, there are very novel methods, in vitro conditions have been developed to understand the metabolism. And the vital organ for the metabolism is a liver. And nowadays, the intestine is another hurdle where there are the expressed various CYP enzymes, or the Caco2 being the expressed PGP flux transporters are there on the gut. So that is also important to understand that metabolism. But routinely used metabolism are the microsomal stability, liver microsomes, then the S9 fraction, when you how this S9 fraction is collected, we can talk in a later slide. And then hepatocytes. These are the major system used to understand the metabolism of any compound moving into the lead to lead optimization. Then stability is another aspect. Sometimes your chemical is not so stable into the plasma. It has ester, it has amide, and which goes under hydrolysis by various esterases or the various amidases. So you need to understand whether the compound is stable into the plasma. And you know there are the CYP enzymes which mainly metabolize your compound. So your compound should not inhibit any CYP up to certain concentration. At the same time, it should not induce, means it should not activate your CYP. Otherwise, it will lead to the drug-drug interaction. So this is another important aspect we need to understand in this ADME. And there are certain organs which are highly expressed with the transporters, like in liver, there are the organic anionic transporters or amino acid transporters. Specifically in the brain, these PGP transporters or few other transporters which will cause the efflux. Your system is such a well, not any compound may sometimes may reach to blood circulation, but it will never cross the blood-brain barrier, which is such a tight junction. So if you really want to develop a compound for CNS, it's a lot harder to pass the compound from the central compartment to the blood-brain barrier, and where this transport mechanism is having the predominant role. Then finally, the distribution. So reaching into the blood circulation, your compound is there in the blood circulation in a good amount, but it is not going into the tissues. It is not going into the skeletal muscle. It is not going into the fats where your target is. Then it's of no use. Or even it is not getting absorbed to the cell in the lungs or the liver. It is of no use. So from the central compartment, your compound needs to get distributed. So where the protein binding is having the predominant role. So to understand the distribution tendency of the compound, we generally calculate the protein binding in preclinical species as well as the human using the ultracentrifugation or the equilibrium dialysis method. And again, what I mentioned about the CNS penetration. So that aspect also we look into in vitro system as well as using the permeability screening or directly into the in vivo condition. So means to optimize your PK, these are the different parameters you need to consider in the lead optimization. So now we will look into the critical aspects or the roadmap, how we generally optimize these parameters. So in industrial setup or in any preclinical discovery. So now this is a chart for the bioavailability. So what kind of bioavailability we expect, and where is the yes go criteria and where is a no, and how you tune your compound to bring this kind of bioavailability aspect to your compound. So here it is specifically given the example of the rat. It can be a mice also. And generally the desired bioavailability we expect in a preclinical species, specifically in a rodent, anything between the 25 to 30% bioavailable is the good. You can take the compound ahead. But if it is more, it's welcome. But if it is a less, then you need to really think because this is the stage where you could tune your compound and get the desired criteria. So once it crosses the greater than 30%, you need to understand or take this compound ahead into the efficacy model and understand whether it shows the efficacy and take it ahead to the next phase. But if it fails to show or the greater than 30, or the if it is less than a 30%, maybe sometime 5, sometime nothing, highly cleared compound, then you need to think on that. So what do you think? Everyone knows that Lipinski has brought the rule of 5 for orally bioavailable compound, wherein you look into this parameter. Really, your small molecule is less than 500, whether the log P is less than 5, hydrogen donor like NH, OH, SH, this type of functionality, the hydrogen bond donor is less than 5, or in terms of all heteroatoms, you consider H and O, they have the tendency to accept the hydrogen. So hydrogen bond acceptor should be the less than 10. So this is the guidelines, but there are few exceptions. But most of the 80% of the compound follows this rule of 5. But as I mentioned now, there is a concept of the PROTAC, proteochimeric compounds, where the glue-like compounds where the molecular weight is around 700, 800. So these exceptions are specifically for the new therapy which are coming up. But for the small molecule, rule of 5 gives the very good success rate. So you need to optimize these physicochemical properties of the compound, design the compound that way. You could come up with this physicochemical SAR, and we fulfill, and even the polar surface area, which is missed over here, the polar surface area should be less than 140 angstrom. So then you optimize, try to bring these properties, then obviously the chances of increasing the bioavailability will be there. And again, even after bringing this all parameters into the molecule, still you are not seeing the good bioavailability. You need to go into the deeper, whether your compound is having any absorption related issue, whether your compound is having the metabolism related issue, then you need to dial it out. If it is an absorption related issue, whether the permeability is not good, whether it is not able to cross the cell membrane or the gut membrane. So you need to look, there are the certain in vitro assays for the permeability or the solubility. We need to check the solubility and need to solve all these issues. At the same time, if it is a metabolism related issue, you need to solve the metabolism related issue in your compound. So funneling down, it came to the metabolism, permeability, and the solubility. These are the 3 determinant factors which influence your compound properties to show the good pharmacokinetic properties. So we'll see one by one and how is the roadmap and how we generally optimize these properties. So if you go to the solubility section, so you know there are the 2 concepts, the 2 kind of solubilities. One is a thermodynamic solubility, or it can be called as an equilibrium solubility, and another one is a kinetic solubility. So before going to the Carter diagram, the thermodynamic solubility is done you'll be using your solid compound. So your solid compound will be made to the saturated solution in any given solvent, and we look with the different LCMS method or LCMS method to understand how much amount of the you really develop the method, and up to saturation you go and check the amount of the concentration into that solution. So it will give like 100 micromolar or milligram per ml. These are the units generally we look into, and you get assess the thermodynamic solubility. But routinely in the discovery phase, you go for the kinetic solubility, because this is the solubility which is used for various screening. Because once you prepare the compound, all big companies or the pharma companies, they make a stock solution of your compound of say 500 micromolar stock solution. And now it is in a solution phase, mainly in a DMSO stock solution, because that is a universal solvent people prefer. And from that stock solution, you keep on diluting this compound into the buffer at a pH 7.4 or around 6.45 and look until the compound get precipitated. So once the compound get precipitated, stop it and check the concentration into that solution. It will give you the kinetic solubility. So what is the major difference? The thermodynamic solubility will be applicable when the compound is moving from the preclinical to clinical phase, and whether it is crystalline, amorphous, or in the polymorph, it will help you to come up with a specific formulation. So in the latter stage of the preclinical, you go for the thermodynamic, but for routinely in initial phase, you go for the kinetic solubility. In the thermodynamic, you directly dissolve the solid compound into the solution, the desired solvent, whereas in kinetic, the stock solution will be used to understand the solubility. So what is the desired criteria of the solubility? So greater than the 60 microgram per ml, or generally they call 40 micromolar is a desired solubility for the compound at pH 6.5, which is very relevant to our biological systems. And if it is passes good solubility, then we go to the next set of assay, which is the permeability. And if it passes to the permeability, it goes to the pK directly. If it doesn't fulfill the criteria, which is less than 60 micromolar, then you need to look at your compound. You need to tune your compound. So how we can improve the solubility? So you need to understand the crystal lattice or the melting point of the compound. If it is a higher melting point, so generally it is they again being in a crystalline nature, you have to go for the thermodynamic solubility, and you need to understand the crystal structure because of it's a very highly packed compound, very ordered compound. It is not going into the solution. In that case, you need to disturb that crystal packing so that you can involve the hydrogen bonding, or you can add some steric clashes into the compound so that the order crystalline form is getting disturbed and your compound will improve in a solubility aspect. Another aspect is if your log P, that the lipophilicity of compound is very high, then in that case, it may not show the good solubility. So you need to run your SAR around the log P. You can introduce the heteroatoms. You could add certain functionality which will facilitate the solubility of your compound. And again, while adding all any substituent, you need to understand you have to maintain the other aspect like potency, selectivity, metabolic clearance, everything into the proper place. So tuning one parameter will disturb the other. So you have to really careful about that. The pharmacophore needs to maintain, and then you design the compound in such a way that you improve your solubility. So, so these are the different aspects. Another aspect, you go with the internal hydrogen bonding of the compound, sorry, intramolecular hydrogen bonding. So that will also help you to improve on the solubility sometimes, and which will disturb the crystalline nature of the compound too. So moving to the next parameter, which is the permeability, which is a very important aspect again, one of the other than solubility and metabolic stability. So whenever you administer your compound to the gut membrane, or if it is causes the cell membrane, it has the two method of crossing those membrane. One is a paracellular compound, which is through the tight junction of the enterocytes. These are the enterocytes where those are, though you can see in the carton diagram some gap, but these are so closely associated. Only the water soluble compounds and very less percentage of the compound pass through these tight junctions. Otherwise, the most preferred route to pass the membrane is a transcellular. So your compound should have sufficient HLB balance so it can take the transcellular pathway. And there are, apart from those, these are the active transport, where through the amino acid, the bile acid, or the PRPT1 transporters, the PGP transporters, the compound can take these transporters and passes the cell membrane or the gut membrane. As I mentioned, the carboxylic acid, which has involved organic anionic transporters, and it reaches to the blood circulation. So for that, you estimate the permeability, and generally this permeability is screened in vitro condition using this colorectal adenocarcinoma cell CACO2 cell lines, which are expressed with all these transporters like PGP, breast cancer receptor protein, or the multi-drug receptor transport protein, MRP transporters are expressed on this CACO2 cell line. Being your compound is having tendency to efflux, we need to understand, so it really has good permeability, and this is the in vitro cell line we use. And when we look at the compound, it should be more than 1, or obviously the preferred is more than 2, 10⁻⁻⁶ centimeter per second. That much permeability compound should have. Then the go criteria is yes, you can go ahead and determine the other factors and take the compound ahead. But if you don't see that good permeability, obviously then why the permeability is, whether your compound is really tendency not to permeate, or it is going into one direction but getting efflux or being sent out of the membrane immediately, which is causing as an efflux property. So whether your compound is a efflux. Now, once we will talk the case study, you will understand these numbers. There is apical and basal. So AB and BA we call. So apical is going from the higher concentration or across the cell membrane, and if it is coming out, it is called as efflux. Basolateral, if we call generally BA. So we need to understand whether it has any efflux tendency. If it is not efflux, then the run parameter to improve the overall permeability of the compound by the various chemical modification and bring the solubility into the compound by improving the lipophilicity or adding the heteroatoms or adding the functionality which will help you to improve the solubility. Or if it has a tendency of the efflux, then how you could overcome the efflux. So there are the two kinds of the efflux, whether it is a PGP substrate or whether it is a non-PGP substrate. So the major efflux is driven by the PGP. And if it is a PGP substrate, then you need to optimize your basicity pKa value of your compound or certain other parameters for the chemical modification and try to improve the efflux or the lower the efflux. And if it is not a PGP substrate, then you need to screen into the different cell lines other than CACO2, which is MDR1, MDCK, wherein you look for whether it is a substrate for the other transporters. And how generally by increasing the lipophilicity, decreasing the molecular weight, the reducing the hydrogen bond donor acceptor, then intramolecular hydrogen bond, and reducing the net change of the, if it is an acidic compound, you need to lower its pH towards the, increase its pH towards the 5.5. If it is a basic compound having the pK around 10 or 9 or 8, you need to bring around 7. So these are the routine tactics we use while doing the chemical modification. If you want to reduce the basicity of the compound, you put the fluorine electron withdrawing functionality so that the pKa is tuned. If it is acidic, then in that case, you can insert some amino functionality into that and try to reduce the pK around 5.5. So these are the routine tactics to improve the permeability and which will eventually give the good pK properties. So the finally and very important aspect of this pK optimization is metabolism. Because once your compound reach to the systemic circulation, or even rather before going in the gut, there are the CYP enzymes present, and they will chew up your compound. So you all know very well there are the two phases of metabolism, phase 1 and phase 2 metabolism. In the phase 1, generally your chemical compound will get oxidized or reduced, or hydrolysis can happen. These are the basic reaction in the phase 2 metabolism. And this phase 1 metabolism will give the good handle to excrete your compound out of your system. Then once it oxidize or reduce, those handles will be used in the phase 2 reaction or the phase 2 metabolism, where compound will be thrown through the one of your excretory organ. So by either glucuronidation or the methylation or acetylation. So if there is a compound having the ether linkage, it will break the ether linkage, give the hydroxy, so where the glucuronide get conjugated. If your compound is having the nitro, it will reduce to the amine functionality, again it will get glucuronide. Or if your compound is having the amide, it will break the bond of amide, give the acid and amine, which are getting eliminated, or the dealkylation. So these are the phase 1, phase 2 reaction, which generally happens into the liver. Liver is the major site of the organ, but apart from that, kidney, GI tract, lungs, and brain also, to certain extent, metabolize your compound. And the small intestine also expresses the all CYP enzyme, all isoforms of the enzyme. So before going into the systemic circulation, your compound will be chewed up and thrown into the feces. So it is very important to understand this metabolism aspect. You need to remove the soft spots on your compound so that your compound should stay it is a sufficient amount of time, but at the same time, it should not remain in your system for a longer time. Obviously, it should see the metabolism after after showing its effect. So the metabolic stability is in vitro condition, as we saw the ADME, which is a single aspect. It's now metabolism. We understand this metabolism aspect of our compound using the 3 different systems. Either it will be liver microsomes. So there is a process, the liver get minced into the small pieces, and ultracentrifugation of that minced liver at around 10,000 RPM, you will get the microsomes at the bottom. Whereas the supernatant, what we get is called as S9 fraction, wherein also all CYPs are present. But the microsomes are highly favored systems in all means all pharma discovery, because that can be stored for a longer time, and very robust assay, which will give you the understanding of the metabolism of your compound. Then the hepatocyte, but in case of the liver microsome, you can't see the phase 2 metabolism. So it is only the phase 1 aspect we can look into the liver microsome screening. So to give the flavor of both phase 1 as well as phase 2, generally people or generally companies will prefer the hepatocyte stability after the microsomal stability, where it gives the complete system. It has a phase 1 as well as a phase 2 metabolism. The glucuronidation can happen there. And the S9 fraction. But S9 fraction, though it gives the phase 1, phase 2 metabolism, it will not give you the understanding whether compound is having any permeability limitation, because these are the minced particles of the liver. So the cell system is getting disturbed. And similar to the liver microsome, it's a fully exposure of the CYP. In case of the S9 also the same way. The permeability aspect is not taken into account as well as liver microsome as well as the S9 fraction. but the hepatocyte gives you the whole complete system where your compound needs to permeate and it needs to get metabolized by either by phase 1 or the phase 2. So these are the 3 screening tools used for the metabolism. If you look at this cartoon diagram, this is metabolism. If specifically in the rat clearance, if it is higher than 50 ml per minute per kilogram, then you need to optimize the compound. If it is less than 50, then you can take the compound ahead for the PK study. Or if it is not, then you need to look for how we could reduce the clearance in this case, or optimize the metabolism. So there are the different techniques to optimize metabolism. In this case, we need to look for the soft spot analysis. There are certain functionalities where the CYP getting chewed up. So we need to block this position by putting certain functionalities or improving. Generally, the lipophilic compounds get chewed up. Then you can adjust the polar surface area of your compound by adding the heteroatoms, so that C log P will be in the range of 2 to 3, and you could avoid the metabolism in that case. Another aspect, if it is clearance is in the microsome, specifically if it is less than 40, then take this compound ahead to the human hepatocyte, because as I mentioned, the microsome will give only the phase 1. So the hepatocyte will give phase 1 and phase 2. So in this case, the greater than 0.7, if it is there, you can't take it ahead and you have to optimize. If it is less, then you can take it ahead for the optimization. And the optimization in this case would again the similar techniques what we observed, what I discussed previously. So you need to optimize using the various considering the soft spot, or even if you don't know any soft spot, in that case, generally people will go for the metabolic identification studies, and they will subject your compound in presence of liver microsomes or the hepatocyte, and then they will look at what the metabolite is forming, which site of compound is getting metabolized, then try to block those sites, either by incorporating the small functionality or by replacing the carbon by heteroatom, or make it a steric hindrance so that you can improve the metabolic stability of your compound. But at the same time, other parameters should not get disturbed. So these are the 3 important factors we looked how we can optimize the pharmacokinetics, and lead to lead optimization is majorly driven by these all parameters. So once you optimize these parameters, obviously you will see the good pharmacokinetic exposure of your compound. And if your compound is having the good exposure, it will show the good effect. And then based on the PK parameters, how much is the half-life, how much is the clearance, how much is the area under the exposure, you need to decide whether you need to dose the animal 2 times a day or 3 times a day, or the single times a day, or even alternative days. So based on that, you could take a call, and this is then means your compound is getting optimized for the efficacy, PK properties as well as the efficacy. And then you need to go for the higher doses, whether your compound, as the dose increases, whether the exposure is getting increased or not. Then at 10 mpk, 20 mpk, 50, or the 3 log dose like 10, 30, 90, and 300, you run the doses and really show whether you are getting the proportionality, dose proportional exposure, whether it is getting or whether it is getting saturated at certain doses. And after the saturation of elimination pathway, suddenly the exposure may increase. So you need to understand all those, because sudden exposure into the concentration will you see the adverse effect, the toxicological effect. So these are the other parameters. Once the PK is also coming good, though only the PK coming good is not good, but at the same time, it has to remain into the therapeutic dose range. So I think these are the optimization factors we saw. So before going to the one of the case study, I would like to ask if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Participants, do you have any queries? You can ask your queries to the resource person. You can raise your hand. Yeah, one of the participant, Namrata
Yeah.
Parikh. Yeah,
Okay.
ma'am, you can ask your question. Namrata Parikh.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Hello, madam. Am I audible?
Yes, audible, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I have query. If we are having a oral dose for effective disease, and if same dose, same formula or same component, we can target to brain by nasal administration. So, how can we decide the nasal dose?
So if the means your question, if I get it rightly, you have administered your compound through the oral route, and it is getting penetrated into the brain. But you want to change the route of administration from oral to the nasal, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So one of the preferred way to look at this, you need to give the nasal. There are the different models for the nasal PK or the nasal exposure. It's very difficult to carry out in a preclinical species, but there are certain instrumentation they have developed. So they will pass the nasal spray with certain amount of concentration. You know how much you delivered the nasal spray, and then look the concentration into the central compartment as well as the brain. Maybe with that, this is a preferred route if you want to avoid the exposure into the systemic circulation, and it should see most of your compound should get deposited into the brain. But obviously, while going to the nasal, it will also see your systemic circulation. But you could look at the brain concentration as well as the plasma concentration, and you can decide which route is giving the good exposure, whether in the brain, through the nasal or the oral. But there are obviously different techniques to understand that. Is that clarify your question, or?
Okay, sir. One more question. Is there any formula to calculate the nasal dose with respect to oral?
It based on whatever the nasal spray or the what formulation you are using. So administered dose, you know how much you administered, but how much effectively went into the system, that you can do the analysis of the plasma sample or the blood samples as well as the blood. But you need to assume that whatever you have given through the nasal, as you know that if you have made the strength of solutions, say like 2 milligram per kilogram, and the whole dose you had delivered, so you need to understand that much dose you had delivered, and now you look for the how much exposure area under the curve you are getting, which will help you to understand the bioavailability. It's a similar way like the IV exposure. It is to be considered as 100% dose. Even in case of the oral, and in that case, you can compare that route of administration to your IV route, so that you will get to understand a comparison of nasal route versus the IV route. Then you will understand the bioavailability. At the same time, you will understand the exposure. But obviously, your compound should have the tendency to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Or even rather, if you can compare the both oral as well as the nasal route, you can understand comparing with the IV, oral versus IV nasal, which route is superior or which is giving the good concentration into the brain.
Okay. Okay. Sir.
Any other participant who want to raise any query? Yeah. Dr. K. N. Rajni, sir, you can ask your question, sir. Yeah. Rajni, sir, you can ask your question. I think there is some issue with the connectivity.
If you want to write in the chat box, you can write that question in the chat box also. If any issues with your microphone.
Patil sir, Rajni sir is unable to unmute himself.
Hello. Rajni sir, you can unmute yourself. Now you can unmute yourself.
Rajni sir, try to unmute yourself. Are you able to do it, sir?
Unmute.
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Rajni sir? Rajni sir, you can unmute yourself. It's enabled now. Or else you can post your query in WhatsApp group, sir. Rajni sir, you can post your query in WhatsApp group. Okay, meanwhile, I would like to ask you a question.
Madam, I rejoined,
Yes.
madam. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, sir. You can ask your question,
There is
sir.
an issue. Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm fine, sir.
Sir, thank you for your valuable presentation, sir, on
Yeah.
the pharmacokinetics, for enlightening us on in the areas of pharmacokinetics, sir.
Sure.
Sir, I have a query, sir. You made a point regarding the central nervous system on the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
And drugs, because of this, they readily penetrate that, they cause profound CNS side effects. Say, for example, like a case of ketamine, sir.
Yeah.
Ketamine will induce the post-operative hallucinations, sir.
Yes.
So now my query is, sir, now how we could optimize the either the dose or the concentration levels of the drug in the CNS, so that we could further minimize the unwanted events. That is my query, sir. Is it possible?
Yeah. See, there are the certain drugs which once enter into your system. Specifically, if you are talking about the CNS exposure, which is very difficult to achieve the CNS exposure.
Yes, yes.
But after the long efforts, you could get the one compound which is having the balance of your effect as well as the balance of your toxicity.
Yes.
But obviously, in case of medical need or based on the need, the FDA approves with certain side effects, which are not very harmful. But obviously, the all companies or the people working in the discovery, they would like to see the efficacy of the compound without any adverse reactions.
Okay.
But the efficacious concentration through the target may have certain disadvantages or the side effect, as you say, the hallucination, or even in the central compartment, we see antihistaminic, which induces the sleep because it reaches to the central CNS, and now the next generation came without the sleeping disorders or the side effect. The similar way you need to balance, and one way to balance that, maybe the route of administration. Can you think with other route? It gives the efficacious concentration and it will not go beyond the efficacious concentration. It should
Okay.
limit into the therapeutic dosage or the therapeutic exposure
Okay.
to the exposure. So that is the one way. But
Yes.
the dose which is giving the efficacy is responsible for giving this adverse event. You
Yes.
can't get dissociated with
Yes.
that. So it has to remain there, but the FDA will approve based on the medical need or the unmet need
Yes.
in that case.
Because, sir, we do find some drugs, especially which is a new drug,
Yeah.
during the post-marketing surveillance, that is the phase 4 of the trials, it is not successful. So it is been even withdrawn from the market.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how the pharmacokinetic issues, like optimizing through a pharmacokinetic issue, how we can monitor that? That is the thing. That's a
See,
major challenge.
Going from the preclinical to clinical, you go with the pharmacokinetics based on the animal studies. You do the
Yes.
allometric scaling and you find the right amount of the dose for the human.
Yes.
And then in the phase 1, generally you look for the specifically the pharmacokinetic behavior of your compound.
Yes.
Whether it is reaching, what is the PK parameters you try to understand in a human,
Yes.
you call it FIH, first in a human.
Yes,
And at the same time, you escalate the doses
Yes.
from 5 milligram to say certain higher concentration. Just allow me 1 minute.
Please.
Sorry, the battery down, so I just restarted recharging. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
no
It's
problem.
okay.
Then once you reached there, then you need to look for the compounds for the efficacious dose going from the 10 milligram to 100 milligram, which is the ED50 of into the human. But
Yes.
even after going that and the efficacious dose, the dose regime, BID, SID, you reach up to the phase 1, 2, and 3, and one involves less amount of the subjects, 15 to 20, and the normal subject. In the phase 2, you go for the disease population and
Yes.
increase the number of subjects. And phase 3, you go for the genetic variation like ethnic.
Yes,
It can be run in the Japanese, Asian, Caucasian, then European, African. So all
Yes.
this genetic makeup is different. So you need to find out the tune, the dose, which is overall giving the good efficacy. At the
Yes.
same time, it should not show any adverse event. So passing through the FDA, then it reached the post-marketing or the after launch, it will be phase 4.
Yes,
And
sir.
certain compounds will show the adverse event into that one. Not to everyone, but a certain class of the population. But then also the FDA will retrieve this kind of drugs. Then again,
Yes.
you need to work out either you need to come up with the second generation compound or you need to optimize the PK properties using the formulation or the dose controlled manner.
Okay. 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 Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Yeah,
for
sure.
addressing our queries.
Sure, sir.
Thank you,
It's
madam.
my pleasure.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Sir.
thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Anil, for a very elaborate and precise addressal of this issue. I think everybody has got practical solutions for their issues from your presentation. Thanks once again.
Thank you. Thank you. I will quickly browse through the one case study presentation, which are having a couple of slides. I hope the time permits you guys.
It's all right.
Sure. I will. So this is one of the case study in a recent article. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is one of the glutaminase inhibitor. This is the biochemical means the how the mechanism of action. It converts the glutamine to glutamate, and the glutamate is involved in the different functions through the glutathione or the alpha ketoglutarate or the ammonia, and it has. If you inhibit this process, all these byproduct means these products are not synthesized, and you could control the proliferation mainly towards the oncology. But at the same time, you can increase the glutamine concentration, and which is having a good effect to control the proliferation. This is the mechanism. This is, if you look at the compounds which this is developed by, I think, the Pfizer. They have series compound. Initially, they have come up with the compound 20, which is having the good biochemical as a functional potency. But however, the metabolic stability was not good. So they have inserted the fluorine into this alkyl chain. And they showed that R enantiomer is favored compared to the S enantiomer, the stereochemistry. And they could improve the metabolism, which you could look from the compound number 20 to 25, compare this row, where the 56-23 values have been dropped drastically to the half of its into the microsomal stability. Then, though the potency is more or less same or slightly improved, after going to this compound, they saw certain solubility parameter is not good. So they have converted this OCF3 functionality into the this difluorocyclobutane substitution they had changed. And that way again optimize the properties into the compound 4, where you could see there is a good improvement into the solubility, these numbers, as well as, but it is having the efflux issue. Though the permeability is greater than 1, but the efflux is a 10, which is not desirable number, up to 4 desirable number. And the stability is good in the macrosome, hepatocyte, plasma protein binding, highly bound compound. But still, we want to overcome the efflux. And what they have done, so they have added this methyl functionality ortho to the pyridine, and they could maintain all the properties. Slightly loss in the potency, but that can be accepted, being the all other properties are highly desired. And as I mentioned, these are the major properties like solubility, permeability, and the microscopic stability, which has influenced this compound, various compounds, to show their PK parameters. And wherever, if you look, concentrate on this compound 27 into the rat and into the dog, which is having the very good bioavailability, very good exposures compared to the other 2 compounds. If you look at the rodent species, all desired properties, low clearance, VSS into the lower range, T-half is 5.3 hours, and good Cmax, good AUC, and good bioavailability compared to the other 2 compounds. In a similar way, in the dog also, this compound has shown the very good pharmacokinetic profile compared to the other 2 compounds. And that is by optimizing the properties what we discussed in our presentation, the solubility, permeability, and stability, as well as considering the plasma protein binding. But PPB is more or less similar to the all compound. And these 3 factors are influencing this PK properties of the compound. So with this case study, I would like to thank all organizing committee, Dr. Patia, Dr. More, Dr. Pawar, for inviting me to this AICT sponsored faculty development program. And I really enjoyed my talk and hope interacting with you all people. And if you have any questions or queries, you can reach to me through my email, and I will be happy to support you. Thank you once again to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the informative session. We appreciate your efforts to make this session really interesting, and beginning from very basic definitions and explaining all the parameters in detail along with the roadmaps made it more easy and interesting. All the points were addressed and explained very precisely. Thank you for the enlightening on the pharmacokinetics. We are grateful to have you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Neela. So
our next speaker has also connected.
Sorry about delaying from my side. I think I have taken your time half an hour extra.
No.
Sorry about that.
No, it's
And-
absolutely fine, sir. The topic was really interesting and we all enjoyed it rather.
Okay, thank you. Can I then leave?